I remember the first time I ever had a $400,000 date. So I get there to his office and I'm like, I'm already here. I might as well make this guy an offer. And you know what he said when I made him that offer? He said, you do that for us? He literally picked up his phone. He said, bring me a check. Should I make it out to you or your business? Gave me a check, took it home, cleared the bank, bada bing, bada boom. And since then, we've had repitches for people. We've done as much as like $3.8 million in 27 minutes. Your imagination is the only limitation.
Today's guest is Myron Golden, and where do I even start with this episode? I'm going to take a try at it. We did this episode like we've never done it before. Tuesday, January 21st, I fly from New York to Tampa. We then spend 48 hours with Myron before I actually filmed the episode in front of a live audience. And I learned so much on this trip, and I wanted to share that with you guys. And so interspersed within this episode, we have these little personal touches where I share something that Myron told me that was not captured during the recorded conversation. And so I want you to find them and let me know if you like it. And one more thing before we get into the conversation. We went all out for this episode. And so if you enjoy it and you want to see more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel. It helps us get incredible guests like Myron. And so if you subscribe, we're going to take this show to new heights together. So let's get into it. You're listening to The Callum Johnson Show.
You're like the master when it comes to sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sales and offers. And you've sold, I don't know, tens of millions worth of product, of offers, of services, coaching. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, I want to take it all the way back to the beginning. I like to start in the beginning, and I like to give
That's a good place to
context.
start.
If I took your early childhood years, your early beginning, your early years, what would I need to understand? What would I need to be aware of to know who you are as a person?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean, so I could answer that, but I don't even know where that would go. What would you need to understand to know who I am as a person?
What were the formative experiences for you?
That I was the second of 7 brothers. So what that would tell you about me is that I know how to get along with people who are not always easy to get along with. Not pretending that I am. Okay. But my parents had some rules. So I grew up with my mother and my father, and they were very, very stern. They didn't ask us for our opinion. And if we gave it to them, they didn't really care, right? So our parents were clearly in control. I remember asking my mom one time, Mom, why can't we get a dishwasher like everybody else? She said, get a dishwasher? She said, I got 7 dishwashers. You and your 6 brothers, right? And so my parents, even though we were pretty poor. I didn't really know we were poor until I got like much older. And my parents taught my brothers and I to work hard and to look out for each other. And if you leave together, come back together. And if your brother gets in a fight, you get in a fight. So I learned lessons like loyalty, hard work, character traits like that, tell the truth, respect your elders, speak when you're spoken to. If you see somebody for the first time, say hello. Like just stuff that's taken for granted in 2025. So I grew up in a family where character and treating people good, even though we didn't always necessarily do it, it was emphasized and taught. Does that make sense?
Yeah. One of the things, because we spent like the last 24 hours together, one of the things I've heard you mention multiple times is more is caught than is taught.
Yeah.
And I think with children, it's like especially the case, right?
100%.
Like, when you're a kid, you just observe so much. And so one of the things I'm curious about, because you talk about the work ethic and all of those things.
Oh, yeah.
What were some of the things that you saw your parents, your dad doing that kind of confirmed that to you?
Bro, like my dad was the toughest dude I ever saw in my life. And he was like a real live superhero. I remember one time we were at the park in Lewistown, Pennsylvania. I think all the details are remotely correct. I was a child. I was in elementary school. But my older brother, Jeff, was in a kite contest. And Jeff will tell the story that all the other kids got kite kits from their parents, and they all look sophisticated and legit and real. My dad built a kite from newspapers and grocery store bags. And my brother was embarrassed by this kite until he won the kite contest. And while he was flying the kite, it got away. And my dad chased it down, and it looked like something out of a superhero movie. He chased it down and caught it. And so, like, my dad could run fast. He could work hard. He was strong. He had big muscles. He knew how to use tools. He had ingenuity. And he was the kind of man that I desired to be when I saw him in his element. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And my mom is probably the greatest woman I've ever known. Like, she had foresight like an Old Testament prophet. She could see something coming before it even got in the state, let alone in the neighborhood. And she's like, no, you don't do this because that leads to that, this leads to that. And I'm like, so, and my parents taught us using the Socratic method. They would ask us questions, and they would make statements that would infer things that would cause us to conclude them. And so those are some of the things that were caught by me and my brothers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You know what, you mentioned earlier, you said we were poor growing up. And it's interesting, I think as kids, there's a certain point in our lives when we start to kind of understand our place in like the economic hierarchy. You know, we see that Sarah at school, you know, she has a bigger house, she got 2 cars in the garage. And I'm curious for you, what was the first moment when you became aware, like, oh, we're poor? Like, when was that for you?
Probably when I was in high school, and I went to this really small Christian school. And my parents we never bought new cars. We'd buy a car for $50, $75, $100, $300 was an expensive car, right? And then we'd fix it, if it needed a transmission or an engine or body parts or whatever. And I remember this was in the 1980s. This was in the 1970s. And we had this 1960-something Buick Electra 25 that my brothers and I would drive to school in. It had like 3 different colored doors and a different colored hood. And all these other kids were driving to school in whatever their nice car was. But I was just happy to have a car, right? And they called our car the Golden Getaway Mobile, right? And so, and I think but when I really noticed it was when we went to some kind of school or church activity at the pastor's house. And he had like 2 nice new cars, and he lived in this neighborhood that I had never even conceived existed. And I'm in high school. So it was just like a totally different experience. It was outside the city. It was in suburbia, which, like, you talk about suburbia, I know it exists, but I didn't know what it was. I'm like, people live like this? What is this, right? I remember when he bought a brand new car, like a 1979 Chrysler Cordoba, right? And I'm like, this is different. I didn't know exactly how or why or what, but I knew it was different.
You know what, one of the things that was actually a surprise to me when I started the research is that you have polio.
Yeah, I had polio as an infant, yeah.
Yeah. And so there was this quote, I heard you say it on an interview that you did. You said, having polio was one of the worst things that ever happened in my life, but it was also one of the best.
100%.
As a child, I couldn't see that. As an adult, I can see it clearly. There are so many skills that I developed in my life that I wouldn't even have had the time to develop if I had the distraction of being able to run.
Wow.
What was some
I
of those?
said that?
You said all of that.
Man, you know what? I might want to memorize that so I can quote it. I want to say that again. Yeah, so what were you I'm sorry. I got so caught up in what you were saying. I'm like, what? Say what? Right.
What were some of those skills you learned?
I learned how to observe. So when you run, your legs do things that you take for granted just because they do them, right? So, and you're thinking, what does that mean? Like, you run, so which means one foot kicks off and the other foot lands. Well, my left foot can't kick off or land. So I watched how people did that so I could see if I could figure out how to make mine do it. And so I just watched people. And what happens when you just spend so much time watching people, you watch other kids play on the playground, and you see things that other people don't see because, well, not because they're not looking for them, but just because they're not looking. I was looking because that's pretty much all I had to do, was look. Like, I'm not going to play tag and we're going to run from somebody and pretend they're not going to catch me. They're going to catch me, so I'm not going to run. I just won't play that game. I'll do something else. I'll sit here and watch y'all, right? And so I remember playing baseball in elementary school, and I had to have a designated runner. So I would hit the ball, but somebody else would have to run to the base for me. And I thought about, I wonder what it would be like to be able to run. Which well, like when I say that probably sounds weird to you, right? Because running is just why you just run. Yeah, except you don't just, see, this is one of the things that brings me so much joy in my life, is the fact that I have the ability to recognize that every good thing I can do is a gift. People think I'm positive. I'm not positive. I mean, sometimes I am, but I'm just aware. What do I mean? I wake up in the morning and I am fully aware that everybody who went to bed last night didn't wake up this morning. So waking up is a gift. Do you realize when you're asleep, you're unconscious? You don't have the ability to protect yourself from a foe that's standing over you with a knife in their hand. You don't even know they're there. You're unconscious. So to go to bed at night and to wake up in the morning is a gift. If you're 1 year old, you've opened that gift 8,760 times. If you're 10 years old, you've opened that gift 87,600. I don't need to keep going. You get it, right? And so I open my eyes and I look around and I know how to make myself look, but I don't know how to make myself see. So that's a gift. So now I've got the gift of waking up and the gift of being able to see. And I hear it's raining today, and I can hear the raindrops. But there are people who've never heard a raindrop. So hearing is a gift. I get it. I get up. Oh, my legs hold me. Well, my right leg holds me. My left one just kind of hangs around for the party. So my right leg holds me. But there are people who have not stood up in decades. So that's a gift. I live in a house. There are people who slept last night, as cold as it was in Tampa, under a bridge, covered up with cardboard boxes. So living in a house is a gift. And we have so many gifts that we start to feel entitled to the gifts that we don't have while we're ignoring the gifts that we do have. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so it gives me the ability to go through every day with a sense of wonder and grandeur and gratitude, because my life doesn't have to be this good. Rich? I was rich when I was poor. I don't know if that makes sense. Don't get me started ranting though, because I can carry a rant.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? It's something that I've actually just observed in life. Some of the people that have had the toughest upbringing or toughest circumstances are the most grateful for life. They walk around life the most fulfilled, the most happy, the most full. And I think what you said is great testament to that. You know what? Here's where I want to go next. You mentioned your dad, and he was like this superhero to you. I think what I'm curious about, when you think about how you grew up, the way you grew up, where did the inspiration of being an entrepreneur, of being in business, where did that begin?
Yeah, so first of all, I saw some movie when I was a kid. This is in the 60s, so I can't remember the movie. I saw some movie about this guy. He went to prison, and he thought, well, I'm going to be in here for a while, so I might as well write letters. I'm going to write letters to people and see if I can get them to give me $1. But write 1 million people give me $1. When I get out, I'll have $1 million. I'm like, if you get 1 million people to give you $1, you'll have $1 million. Wow, I never thought of that before. That's pretty cool. Then I noticed when I was a little kid in elementary school, my dad would come home from work, he'd be tired, he'd be irritated, sometimes he'd be angry because they overworked him and underpaid him. This is a black man in a town where there were only 6 black families in the whole town who worked like a 3-legged mule and was underpaid in the 60s. And then in the 70s. And it seemed like he'd come home and he'd be frustrated that these people were taking advantage of him and not paying him the money and blah, blah, blah. He's got 7 kids and 7 kids of his own, but sometimes my aunts and uncles, and they would bring their kids, and my parents would have 11 kids, 12 kids, 15 kids. Like, everybody came to live with us, and we were the poorest ones. It was so crazy, right? And so, but what happened, my dad came home when I was 16 years old. I remember he came home, and he's like, I'm never working for anybody again. I'm like, what do you mean you're never working for anybody again? Like, what are we going to do? And he just started working for himself. And then he made more money working for himself than he ever made working for anybody else. And I'm talking about back in the 70s. I remember going to work. I'm a teenager. I go to work with my dad. It's on a Saturday morning. And it wasn't like, hey, son, do you want to go to work with me? He said, you're going to work with me. There was no, do you want to go? You're going. Well, since I knew I was going anyway, I might as well want to go because that makes it better, right? And so we go to work, and he's working at this little gas station filling. It's like a filling station, which is different than gas stations now. It's where they work on your car, they clean your windshield, they put the gas, that whole. And he's working there, and they've got a drain problem. And so we're out there working, and we get there, and my dad was a plumber. We dig this big hole in the ground. We break a hole in the pipe. And we start snaking it out, which is a tool that you put in to break up the clog. And we get it fixed in like, I don't know, hour and a half. He's like, okay, now we're just going to chill for a while. Okay, we're going to chill for a while. Can we like go do it? No, we're going to chill for a while. So then we sit there and we're there for about 3 hours just, doing stuff. And he goes and charges them and he gets paid $900. Like, you can make $900 in a day without a job? What is this? Right? And so that was the first time I was actually like cognizantly aware of the fact that I didn't know the word entrepreneur, but I knew you could make money without having a job. I was like, that's a vibe. He made more in one day than he used to make in a whole week, sometimes in 2 weeks working for somebody else. I'm like, let's do that, right? And then when I came home from college, after my freshman year in college, I bought like a 1972 Buick Skylark. This was in 1981. Bought a 1972 Buick Skylark from the junkyard for $50. Or no, I bought it from the Paxtang Herald. It was a local newspaper for $50. Drove it around all summer. Like, might have put some spark plugs in it or something. I didn't do much to it. It was just an old raggedy car. Didn't have any carpet in it. Just had like these rubber floor mats. It was like a basic car, no hubcaps, just wheels. And I drive it around all summer. I get ready to go back to college in Indiana from Pennsylvania. It's not going to make the trip. I sold it to a friend of mine. He gave me $300 for that car I paid $50 for and drove it around all summer. I'm like, wait a minute. I bought it for $50. I sold it for $300. This is a thing. I literally started buying cars for $50, $150, $300, fix them up sometimes not have to fix them up, just mark them up, put them in the paper the next day, and then 3 days later sell it for $200 or $300 or $400 or $500 more than I bought it for. So that was my first, and that was when I was 19, 20, 21. That was before I became a, quote, entrepreneur. That was just me figuring out how to shake the money tree when I couldn't find a job.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is that I think about that moment where you see your dad get paid $900, and then the moment when you sell the car, and it's like your mind is opening up.
Yes.
And there's so much power for us in humans. I think about how much is our potential limited because we just didn't see something at a certain point.
Right.
And it's like once you see it,
you can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like transformation literally always begins with awareness, because people think that they lack access to abundance. In America, almost nobody, I won't say nobody, but most people don't lack access to abundance. They lack awareness of the access they have to abundance. And when you become aware, then you're like, oh, I might as well just go ahead and access that thing.
Okay, congratulations. You've reached personal moment number 1. And so, a little anecdote. I spent 48 hours with Myron, but from the first moment that I met him, the biggest thing that stood out to me is he has this aura of abundance. And so after a couple of days, I asked him, I said, how can someone go from a scarcity mindset, being deep in scarcity and lack, to an abundance mindset? And what he told me is that it comes down to 3 things. Number 1, he goes, your mind believes what you tell it. So change the words and you'll start seeing different actions. And actually, I wrote this down in my notes. What he said is that the easiest way to do this is to remove the 2 words, I need, from your vocabulary. I need more money. I need a vacation. I need customers. All of this is the language of scarcity. Instead, what Myron told me that he does, he speaks in terms of what he wants to happen. I want this thing to happen. That will instantly move you from scarcity to abundance in terms of what you are saying. I started doing this and it's powerful. The point number 2 that he said to me, he goes, I don't spend money on anything. I create offers. And so instead of thinking, how can I work for money? How can I exchange my time for money? He creates offers that solve a problem and he sells those offers. And then the final thing, and I wrote this in my notes as well. He said, the more you give, the more you receive. Scarcity thinkers hoard money out of fear. Abundance thinkers give freely because they know that the money will always return. And so that's a quote that I actually wrote down in my notebook. And the learning for me from this was to get in the habit of giving, even if it's in very small ways. I watched Myron tip every single waiter or service person that we came across over the 48 hours that we were with him, and he tipped huge amounts. That's not actually the important thing. The important thing isn't the amount, it's get in the habit of giving, and that giving will return to you 10x more. Let's get back to the episode. See if you can find personal touch number 2.
You know what I'm curious to understand, because you're one of 7 brothers.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty unique.
Yeah, it is. Especially with my 7 brothers, it's extremely unique. Because we're all the same, but we're all very different. Hey.
What would you say the influence, you can take any of the brothers you want, what has been the influence of having those siblings in your life? Like, what has that created?
It's created an opportunity to be there for someone when they need you and to have someone be there for you when you need them. Like when King Solomon, the wisest, wealthiest man who ever lived, when he wrote in the book of Proverbs that a brother is born for adversity, like your brothers were given to you for when you're going through hard times, and you were given to them for when they were going through hard times. I remember, so I was in 3rd grade, so Jeff was in 5th grade. I was in 3rd grade, and there was this kid who was in my brother's grade, my older brother's grade, and we were playing baseball cards, and he cheated. And I'm like, even in elementary school, I was a person of principle. And I'm not going to be a punk. You might beat me up, but you're not going to make me capitulate to your lie, right? So he cheated, and he took all my baseball cards. I went and told my brother Jeff. Jeff says something to this guy, and he sucker punches Jeff in the eye. I'm like, okay, cool. He got him back later. Like, beat him into the ground. I know that sounds terrible, but that's what we did. My parents, says another thing about my parents, they taught us to fight, especially for each other, right? And so I can remember times when my brother Rob has been there for me, my brother Dwayne, my brother Jeff, my brother Mike. I can remember times when all my brothers have been there for me at different times. And I can remember times I've been there for them. And the times that I've had the opportunity to be there for them has been a privilege to me because I don't forget. Like, I remember when my brother got a medical discharge from the Army, and he got this big settlement, and I was broke as a joke, man. I was pitiful poor. You know what pitiful poor is, right? That's when you're so poor. Poor people feel sorry for you, right? And he gave me $900 at a time where $900 might as well have been 900,000, and I never forgot that. And I've been able to be there for him. My brother Jeff has been there for me, and I've been able to be there for him. My brother Mark, all of them. They've been there for me in times when I absolutely had to have someone here, and I've had the opportunity to do the same thing for that. That's the vibe of having 6 brothers.
You know what? You mentioned being pitifully poor. I have your book here, From Trash Man to the Cash Man. When you say that in kind of that early period of your life, being pitifully poor, if someone's listening, and they are listening,
sure,
if they wanted to be able to visualize that, to feel what that was like
sure.
for you, if they were like a fly on the wall, like
what
someone just observe it, like what did it look like? Like what does that mean?
It means you live in a 1-bedroom apartment with your wife and your baby, and the apartment costs $250 a month, and your car payment is $300 a month, and you have utilities, food, insurance, etc. And every month you juggle the bills. This month I'll pay the electric bill and the water bill and the car payment. Next month I'll pay the car payment and the electric bill and the gas bill. And the next month I'll pay the water bill and the gas bill and the car. Okay, the car payment's gonna have to wait till next month. They'll give me an extension. Like, you're always robbing Peter to pay Paul. And then one day, out of the clear blue sky, there's a knock at the door. Peter and Paul are both on the front porch. They're like, give us our money. Like, it's like, here's what pitiful poor feels like. Your wife is 8 months pregnant with your first child, and your electricity in your house and your water in your house are both disconnected at the same time. And you move across the country with a wife that's 8 months pregnant on a Greyhound bus because you don't have a car that will take you that far. Yeah. And you rent a U-Haul truck and your brother drives it from Indiana to Pennsylvania while you and your wife are on a Greyhound bus going 700 miles when she's 8 months pregnant. That's what pitiful part feels like and looks like.
You know,
is that a pretty clear description?
That's very clear. You know, we're gonna get into what happens next and how you did it and the success that came. But you know what? First, I want to talk about what does that do to someone on like a human level, like that feeling.
It gets worse, bro. Because but my wife's 8 months pregnant. If I don't have a job, guess what else I don't have?
Income.
What else? My wife's pregnant.
Insurance.
Health insurance. She's getting ready to have a baby. Babies ain't cheap to have, right? Not even just getting them here is kind of expensive, right? Just the trip from wherever they came from to here, it's like it's more than a round trip ticket to Europe, right? And so we got on welfare for like 4 months, so I'd have insurance for my wife's delivery. We went to the welfare office. This is what the welfare person said to my wife. This is when I knew this will never happen again. The welfare office person, whatever they're called, said to my wife, you know, we could give you more money if he wasn't in the house. He has a name, bruh, right? And so I was so irritated. I wasn't allowed to own a car. I wasn't allowed to own a house, and we could give you more money if he wasn't in the house. So people think that the welfare system exists to help them make it. It actually exists to enslave them and separate the family. So anyway, I'm like, oh, we about to break free of this, and we ain't never coming back.
It was almost like you were nothing in that moment.
Right. To them, I was nothing. To me, my family is everything. We're going to do this. We're going to figure it out.
So at that point, you had the vision.
No, at that point, I didn't even have the vision. I just had the irritation. I didn't have a vision. I had no earthly idea how I was going to go from this to what this wasn't.
Yeah.
But I was irritated enough to make this person wrong.
Okay, quick break. One of the things that I've noticed is that when I get great sleep, I am more productive, I have more energy, and I hit my goals. And when I get poor sleep, on the other hand, I'm irritable, I start binge eating everything in my apartment, and it's hard to focus. And so one of my goals for this year has been to improve my sleep quality. Now, that's included a few things, but the biggest thing is the sponsor of today's episode, 8 Sleep. And so let me tell you guys this. A few weeks ago, I got my 8 Sleep pod cover in the mail, and it's now become one of the coolest gadgets in my home. And so you simply slip it over your existing mattress, and then they have an app where you can control the temperature of your bed. You can cool it down to a chilly 55 degrees or warm it up to 110 degrees. And it does this separately for each side of the bed. So if you have a partner, you can both be happy. I like sleeping on the cooler side. And so one feature that I like about the cover is that it actually learns your sleep patterns over time and automatically adjusts the temperature throughout the night so that you get perfect sleep. It's such a pleasant experience. And let me say this, I was skeptical about adding technology to my sleep routine, but honestly, the pod is super quiet and easy to maintain. I've slept better using it as a result, and it's actually now my alarm clock as well. The bed gently warms up when it's time for me to wake up, which makes it just a nice, pleasant start to my day. And so if you want to check out 8 Sleep, go to the description, use code Callum to get your 8 Sleep pod cover. Okay, quick break. One of the things that has stopped me from investing, be it in stocks or crypto, is just how much is going on. The prices are changing. New information is always coming out. And so it's been difficult for me to keep track until I started using the sponsor of today's episode, public.com. And Public is the app where you can invest in everything: stocks, options, bonds, crypto, all in one place. And so what really sets Public apart is they give you all of the tools you need to make an informed investment decision. Their built-in AI tool, Alpha, doesn't just tell you if an asset is moving up or down, it tells you why the asset is moving. And so you can actually start to understand what's driving your portfolio's performance. And so Public is a FINRA registered, SIPC insured, US-based company with a great customer support team. And when you fund your account, you can do it in 5 minutes or less at public.com/Callum. And when you use that code, you can get up to $10,000 when you transfer your old portfolio to Public. So that's public.com/Callum. And this was paid for by Public Investing. The full disclosures are in the podcast description. Let's get back to the episode.
Talk to me about the trash man era.
Yeah.
Trash man. What was, even when I say that word, what experiences come to mind?
That literally, so many. That literally happened right after the welfare experience. That was my first job that I got after we got married, after we got off welfare. Got a job working for Chambers Development that later got bought up by Waste Management. And it's so funny. Like, people think that stuff has to work in order for it to work. All it has to do is have somebody willing to work it, right? So to drive a trash truck, I don't know if y'all know this or not, but trash trucks are not automatic transmissions. I don't know if y'all know that. You got to shift the gears. Well, you have to push the clutch in with your left leg. Well, I'm like, that's about as much movement as I'm getting out of my left leg right there. That's it. So so to get this job driving a trash truck, they give you a driving test. Now, I could drive a stick shift, but I'd have to pick up my leg, put it on the clutch, push it in with my left arm. So my left hand is on my left leg holding the clutch down. Then I have to put my right hand on the gear shift to put it in first gear. Then I have to let the clutch out slow enough with my left hand and put my right hand back on the steering wheel so that the truck doesn't just buck and jump. And I have to do that while I shift all the gears. Man, I grinded those gears all up and down that highway. And they hired me anyway. I was like, okay, let's go. They said, we'll pay you $6.25 an hour, $9.50 for overtime. How many hours can I work? As many as you want. Say less. And so I didn't drive trash routes. I was a shuttle driver because trash routes fill up trash trucks. Shuttle drivers take the trash truck to the dump and empty them and then bring them back and go get another one and dump. So I'd empty about 4 or 5 trucks a day and then I'd go home. Drive to the dump, unload it, come back, get another one, drive it to the dump. So I'm in my trash truck listening to Earl Nightingale's Strangest Secret. I'm in my trash truck listening to motivational tapes of Art Williams talking about, just do it, then talk about it, and I'm so on the side, I've got this little side gig to sell insurance because I got started all that around the same time. So during the day, I'm driving this trash truck. I get up at like 2 o'clock in the morning, go to the yard, check out my truck, make sure the hydraulic fluid, the oil, everything's okay, full of gas, full of diesel, drive down to the dump, empty it, get back, do another one, go home, take a nap, go out on appointments, selling ad insurance. And I say selling at because I wasn't selling any insurance, I was selling at it, okay, and nobody was buying it. But what that did for me, like what experiences do I remember? I remember loving this job because I could listen to this personal development stuff in my truck because I'm by myself and I don't have anybody standing over me. I had 2 accidents. One, when my boss let me use my truck to go to my house to like get rid of some furniture or something that I had at my house. And when I turned the corner, because these trucks are huge, right? I turned the corner, my neighbor across the street who loved his car, he almost worshiped it. He washed it every day. It was pristine. And I didn't know it, but the back of my truck caught the back of his bumper and pulled his car all out in the street, ripped it all down the side. And he didn't notice it. But then my brother-in-law, who was staying with us at the time, he told me, hey, man, you just tore up this dude's truck across the street, this car across the street. I'm like, what? So I went and knocked on his door. I said, hey, man, I messed up your truck. We have insurance. I'm sorry. He was not happy. And then I told my boss, and they still didn't fire me. So here's the lesson. They hired me when I couldn't pass the driving test. They didn't fire me when I wrecked the truck. They needed drivers more than I needed a job. There's always somebody who needs your offer more than you need their money. Never forget that. And so then my boss could see, like, when everybody else is on break, they're doing whatever they do. When I'm on break, I'm reading like the greatest salesman in the world. Like, my boss says to me, what are you doing? Trash men don't read motivational books? Oh, I ain't a trash man. I just drive a trash truck, bro. I'm on my way, right? And so literally, I got promoted from driving a trash truck to selling solid waste removal containers for that same company. So I went from making $6.25 an hour to $30,000 a year plus commissions in sales at that job.
You know, I think about the power of that statement you just said, that I'm not a trash man, I'm just driving a trash truck.
Right.
And the reason I even mention that, it shows the power of identity.
That part.
Right? That you could be in a position in life, but like, yes, physically you're doing this thing, but your mind is not that.
Right.
And so, you know, I want to go back to that moment, because I'm like, what creates that? Like at that point in time, what is giving you the confidence, the belief, the perspective that this is actually not my identity, even though I turn up every day and I get paid $6.25 an hour to do this thing, but that's not my identity.
Right. Because for me, at that time, I was probably, let me see, how old was I? 27? So I had already been a follower of Christ who was reading the Bible and studying it faithfully for 10 years at that point. So I knew my identity came from the ultimate identity, which is the I am that I am. So I wasn't like, it didn't matter to me what anybody thought about me. I knew who I was based on whose I was. And I didn't even understand it then anywhere near like I understand it now. And I don't understand it anywhere now like I'm going to 10 years from now. But I understood it enough to know that I was made for more than this, whatever this is. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You know, I want to go deeper, because I think one of the things, I think people really struggle with the identity piece.
They do. Oh, bro, on so many levels, you have like, that's like, so remember we were talking yesterday, I was like, the formula for success in Genesis chapter 1 is be, do, have. Think about this. When you meet somebody, the first thing you tell them about you is the most important thing you want them to know about you. It may not even be the most important thing about you, but it's the most important thing you want them to know about you, right? So here's what's fascinating. The first thing God, like you talk to people, you say God is, they say good, and then they say all the time, right? That's cool. But the first thing God tells us about God is not that he's good, even though he's good. Not that he's loved, even though he's loved. Not that he's holy, even though he's holy. What's the first thing God tells me about God? In the beginning, God created. Well, when in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, I'm like, why? He doesn't need heaven. He doesn't need earth. So why would he create it? The only answer I've been able to discover is because he is creative, and therefore it is his nature to create. So the first thing that God tells us about God is that he's creative. The first thing he tells us about us is that he created us in his image, which means he created us to create stuff and he made us to make stuff. Now, here's what blows my mind. You ready? The first thing he says to man. First time God's ever addressing man, he doesn't give him the Sermon on the Mount. He doesn't give him the 10 Commandments. What does he say? Be fruitful and multiply. Multiply. What is that? That's a do. Be fruitful, do multiply, do replenish, do subdue, have dominion. Be, do, have. That's the first command that God gave man thousands of years before the 10 Commandments. Why? Because being speaks to my identity. Doing speaks to my activity. And having speaks to my property. Now, here's what people will tell you. If what you're doing is not working, you got to try harder. You got to work harder. So work harder at what's not working to make my life work. Well, that is as dumb as a box of rocks. Would you like a scientific formula for high achievement? If you don't like the output, change the input. Guess what? Being is the input for doing, which means you get your identity established and let that determine what activities you produce. So being is the input for being is the input for doing, and doing is the output. So identity is the input for activity. Activity is the output. Activity is the input for property. In other words, doing is the input for having. Here's what be, do, have means. This is the ultimate success formula. Be, do, have. Be a little, do a little. Do a little, have a little. Be a lot, do a lot. Do a lot, have a lot. Be, do, have. Don't be, can't do. Can't do, can't have. Yeah. That's the formula. Be, do, have. I know who I be, and I know that's not good grammar. And I don't get my identity from my activity. I get my activity from my identity.
That's good. That's good. Okay. You know what? So, and you even mentioned that even while you're the trash man, you're selling insurance. And to me, actually, that wasn't the interesting part of the story. The interesting part of the story is that you did that for 18 months before you made your first sale.
Yes.
And I think about that because even for me, like I've tried to start like agencies in the past, and sales felt like the most difficult thing to me. Mm-hmm. And you know,
It does to most people.
but I wouldn't actually do that much volume. Maybe I'd be on, I don't know, 5 sales calls and it wouldn't work out, and I'd be like, man, this is tough.
Right, exactly.
I'm struggling with this. Jesus. 18 months you're doing this job.
Yeah.
No sales.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that experience? And can you also talk about, I call it sticking through the suck. Sticking through that period where you're not getting anything from doing the thing.
But you are. I guess it's my awareness that I was getting something from it. Because all work works. Now you might say, what do you mean all work works? Because I did that, I tried that, it didn't work. Oh, it worked. See, work has 3 phases. 1, you work on it, and it does not work for you. That's a gift. When you work on something that doesn't work for you, that's a gift. How's that a gift? Because it's showing you that you've not become the person. It's like a mirror. It's saying, no, you have not yet developed into a person who can do this. So when it's not working for you, the work is working on you. The work that the work does on you is way more valuable to your life than the work that the work does for you. So when it feels like it's not working, that's when the work is doing its best work. But so many people quit because they want it to work for them, but they're unwilling to let it work on them. Now, if you get to the place and the work works on you, and then you become the person for whom the work works, now it works for you. And then you decide, I'm going to do it a different way because I'm bored. I'm going to do it a different way because I saw this person doing this thing. I'm going to do it a different way. You got this little voice in your head. Now the work starts working against you because you've decided to work against principles. That is a battle you can never win. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I knew, like, again, back to my dad. My dad used to sing this song to us. It was like, oh man, why do they keep doing this? Like, I thought, what are they doing, right? So my dad used to, anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. Anything you can do, I can do better. And I can do anything better than you. Like, what is this, bro? I didn't say, what is this, bro? Because like, I would have found my head on the other side of the room from my body. But I thought it, right? And my dad, I can remember him telling me, son, if somebody else can do something, you can do it because they've shown you it can be done. If you learn how to do it and you get good at it, you can become better than them. I'm like, okay. And I believed him. Now, I didn't know he was right, but I had no reason to believe he was wrong. He wasn't getting anything from me. So I was like, what am I going to do for you? You're a grown man. I'm a little kid, right? And so I believed that. And here's why people say, well, why didn't you quit? Quit and do what? This is the only arena in my life where I've ever seen anybody have a conversation like, hey, yeah, I've been doing this for 2 years and I'm making $10,000 a month. $10,000 a what? This is in 1985. The guy who introduced this to me was not particularly charming. He wasn't charismatic. He was kind of a boring old dude with a white beard. Oh, that's right. He was making $10,000 a month. I didn't know anybody else. I had never met anybody making $10,000 a month. I had never heard the phrase $10,000 a month before. I've met someone who's making $10,000 a month, and I'm thinking, if he can do it, I can do it. What do I care how long it takes? The time's going to go by anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And it's like sales. Sales is hard. Well, like I told my son when he came home one day from school, and he said, Dad, this math is so hard. I said, well, of course it's hard. Everything's hard when you don't know how to do it. So learn how to do it, and then it'll become easy. People think that selling is hard. It is hard for them because they haven't learned how to do it. You know why they haven't learned how to do it? Because they assigned a level of difficulty to it before they even stepped in the arena. Oh, this is going to be so hard because they don't like what they perceive sales to be, which is not what sales is anyway. They perceive sales to be convincing people to buy things they don't want, don't need, and can't afford. But that's not selling, that's convincing. What's selling? Selling is uncovering the value of what you have to offer so well that people are happy to exchange the money they have in their pocket for the value you've revealed. See, convincing is when I attempt to get you to do something I desire you to do for my reasons. Persuasion, selling, is when I help you do something, when I empower you to do something you already desire to do for your own reasons. Which means if I'm going to sell to you, I can't be thinking about what I'm going to get. I have to be focused on what you're going to get. Because the scripture says, as in water, face answereth to face, so doth the heart of a man to a man. What does that mean? People don't see you through their eyes. They see you through your eyes. If you're looking at that person and thinking, oh my goodness, when they buy this thing, I'm going to make so much money. They can see the reflection of that in your eyes because you can lie with your words, but your energy always tells the truth.
That's good. That's good. Okay, you know what? Because I want to make this so real for people, and I think it'll actually be an interesting side of you to hear about. If we take that moment when it wasn't working for you in sales, and I don't know,
And it was working on me.
that moment when it was working on you, when the work was working on you, and let's say, I don't even know in this universe, I managed to go back to, that was in the 80s? The 1980s? When
That was in
you
the
were doing
80s, yeah, late 80s.
Let's say that I went back into that period and I'm like a little fly in the wall in your office and I got to just observe what you were doing. What were the daily actions of Myron Golden, the salesman that wasn't selling anything? What would I have seen? What is the behaviors? What is the things that were happening that was leading to that result?
Oh, interesting. So first, let's look at how I first learned how to do a presentation. Because if you're going to grow at scale, you have to have a standard operating procedure. In sales, in the 80s, a standard operating procedure looked like a flip chart that had a predetermined presentation on it. And I've never seen one that was good. But there's some that are good out there. I've just never seen them. And so I had to take this flip chart. So I took my flip chart, and because it was like a little, like, heavy paper flip chart on some weighted cardstock type paper, full color, and you flip through it and you read the words on the page, but there's no words for the transition between the pages. And so you can't just read the thing to the person. You could have just gave it to them. They could have read it to themselves. And so what I did was I bought 2 flip charts. I took one of them apart. I know you're going to think this dude was obsessive. I was. I took one of them apart, and then I took the first page. And when I got down to the end of the first page, I said, what am I going to say that's going to help me smoothly transition from this page to this page? And I wrote on the bottom of page 1 what I was going to say to introduce page 2. I did the same thing from page 2 to 3, and 3 to 4, and 4 to 5, and 5 to 6, all the way through my presentation. So now, and then you had to do a presentation in front of your regional vice president before you were allowed to talk to clients. When I finally did this presentation to my regional vice president, he called his wife and he's like, Donna, this is the best presentation I've ever heard. You got to hear it. And with the best presentation you'd ever heard, it took me 18 months to make my first sale because I didn't realize that selling wasn't about reciting the words. It was about conveying the conviction that this is going to make your life better. Yeah. And so I had to go from reciting the words to conveying the conviction, to making them feel how much better their life was going to be when they heard yes. Because I knew they needed this. Like, I don't understand it. Like, I've got millions of dollars worth of life insurance, and I'm worth more to my family alive than I am dead, thank God. So nobody has anything up their sleeve. But I'm going to make sure that if something happens to me, my wife and my children, my grandchildren are good. And I pay, I think, about $130,000 a quarter. No, $130,000 a year just for life insurance premiums. But it's worth it. Why? Because even though we already have like a whole bunch of money, why not more? For them, if something happens to me that's non-taxable, let's go. Anyway, so I believe in life insurance. I believed in it then, I believe in it now. Because I didn't want my wife to have to go find somebody if something happened to me just so she could take care of herself. I didn't want my kids to have to suffer I didn't want them to suffer and not have enough food to eat just because I'm not here anymore. They are my responsibility because they're my responsibility whether I'm here or not. A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, right? And so for me, that's one of the things I was doing. I was practicing. But I was also, in between presentations, I was reading books on sales like Tom Hopkins, How to Master the Art of Selling Anything. You got to go through 10 no's every day. And he drew this picture. See 20 people, STP 20. See 20 people every day, nose to nose, toes to toes, belly to belly, across the kitchen table. So I prospected 20 people a day. He said you got to learn how to love no. There's pain and change until the benefits of that change appear. Reading all the scrolls of The Greatest Salesman in the World, Part 1, The Greatest Salesman in the World, Part 2, and all of the rest of Og Mandino's books. And I'm learning to think differently because mindset has to happen before skill set. If I have the skill set and don't have the mindset, I'm never going to do the work.
You know, it's interesting. I remember reading this from Alex Hormozy. He calls it the rule of 100. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he says is that a lot of people, like if you're struggling with sales or something, people think that they have like a quality problem, like they're just not good enough or there's something missing. He said most of the time we actually have a quantity problem.
1,000.
We just haven't done the thing enough. So even with the rule of 100, he has this thing where he's like, if you want to get rich from sales and you want to do it in 90 days, what you should do is do the certain actions, or whatever that is, sending out cold emails, cold calls, pitching people, whatever. Do it 100 times a day for 90 days and then see where you're at. And it's the same in any craft. If you talk to Mr. Beast about how to get the biggest YouTuber on the planet, how to get great at YouTube, just create videos, 10 years and just keep doing it. And way before you get to 10 years, you'll be a great YouTuber. Yep. It's the same principle.
100%.
You know, it's funny because I mentioned it took you 18 months to make your first sale. Mm-hmm. And then once you made your first sale, within a few months, you're the top salesperson in the company.
And not in the company, in our office. But yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Talk to me about that transition from you just make your first sale to...
Yeah. So, and you know what's really interesting, Calvin? Somebody asked me, so what happened? Like, how could you go from not being able to make a sale to being the top salesman? Easy. I finally went through enough ways that wouldn't work. I finally found a way that would. When I found a way that worked, I didn't get bored with it. I got paid with it. I put that thing on rinse and repeat. And see, like when I find something that works, why would you get bored with something that's making you money and helping you win the game just because you know it? That doesn't make any sense to me. So when I find something that works, I put that thing on rinse and repeat. And that's all I did. I just kept, okay, this is why people buy, so I'm going to keep doing this. It's literally that simple.
What's the moment you make your first $10,000 in a month?
I don't even, like it was so long ago, I honestly don't even remember. I remember in April of 1999, the first time I ever made $6,000 in a week. It was $6,200 I made in a week. The year before that, the whole year I made $48,000. Well, that's $4,000 a month. So I went from $4,000 a month the year before, and all of a sudden, because I shifted my focus from the focus of a middle-class person to the focus of a wealthy person, April of 1999, I made $6,200 in 1 week. I was like, wow. Then I said it backwards. I said, wow. Then I said it upside down and backwards. I said, Mom, wow. Okay? And so what I did was I said, wow, that was easy. And then it was like a light, this super bright light flashed on in my head. That must mean it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. If that's true. By the way, I think this is one of the most important foundational beliefs that anybody can start with. It's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. Regardless of what you feel is a lot of money or regardless of what you feel is a little bit of time. Because if you do, and then you make this decision based on that awareness, if that's true, and I believe it is, never again will I look at or for the hard ways to make a little bit of money. I'm only willing to look at, and I'm only willing to look for the easier ways to make a lot. Like, I'm ignoring all the hard stuff now. Even though the hard stuff is the only stuff the cultural hypnotic societal mechanism taught me to do when I was growing up and learning how to be a man, I'm ignoring that stuff now. I'm looking for the easy ways to make a lot of money. Guess what happened? By July of that same year, I had my first $8,000 day in the stock market because I finally stopped looking at the hard ways to make a little bit of money. I remember the first time I ever had a $400,000 day. This was in 2008, right after this is August of 2008. And like, we were like, it was unraveling. People who owed me a lot of money disappeared from the planet. And there's a guy, and I'm going to go meet this CEO. So I get there to his office, and a friend of mine's there. He invites me in, the CEO invites me in. We talk for a little while. I'm like, I'm already here. I might as well make this guy an offer. So I made him an offer for $400,000 where he could buy 100,000 of those Trash Man to Cash Man books. He'd pay $5. He'd pay $3 a piece for them, because it only cost me back then. It cost me like $1.25 to get printed. He paid me $3 a piece for them, and I published a newspaper. I said, I'll sell you 200,000 newspapers, and that whole offer was $400,000. He said, and you know what he said when I made him that offer? He said, "You do that for us?" And I thought to myself, just as sure as you write that check, right? He literally picked up his phone. He said, "Bring me a check. Should I make it out to you or your business?" Make it out to me. I called my assistant. I said, "Hey, create a purchase order. Send me a purchase order for $400,000. I'm gonna get this guy." Gave me a check. Took it home. Cleared the bank. Bada bing, bada boom. And I was like, that was so easy. It was crazy. And that since then we've had like where we've done repitches for people. We've done as much as like $3.8 million in 27 minutes. It's just,
That's insane.
but that's to a big group of people. But still, it's just like, there's like, your imagination is the only limitation.
I love that, because I think and we all have this. I know I've definitely had it in my story. Is we have like these plateaus, like these glass ceilings. Like we can get to 5,000 a month, but I can't get past 5,000 a month. And then I can get to 10,000 a month, but I can't get past 10,000 a month. And it's like you're consistently smashing through these glass ceilings. And to your point, the imagination is the only limitation, right? And there's a perspective, like for certain people, they might even hear 3.8 million in 27 minutes, and that's like nothing to that.
Right. Like, so why are you making a big deal about that, bro? Right. So I have a friend, and he's a mentor and a friend. And we were talking about, we do all right. We average between 10 and $15 million a year working part-time. It's not terrible. It's a good gig if you can get it. So we're talking. This friend of mine says to me, "Myron, you're really doing good. You got a great story." He says, "But you could do so much better." I'm like, "Say more, bro." And he challenged me. I mean, he literally challenged me to like a multi-$100 million result in a matter of months. But instead of I had no internal resistance to it. Like he said, "You should be able to acquire at least, $300 to $400 million worth of real estate in the next 6 months." And I had no internal resistance to that, because I already knew it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than to make a little money over a long period of time. So, and the bigger the amount gets and the shorter the period of time gets, the more sense it makes to me. Now, here's what I know about people watching right now on YouTube, on your show. Here's what I know. Everybody hopes I'm telling the truth, and they'd love to believe it. Right?
Yeah.
But would you agree that for most people, it's really hard to believe that's true?
Yeah.
Okay.
It feels nearly impossible.
Say it again?
It feels to them nearly impossible.
Nearly impossible. So can I prove it? Can I prove that this is real? It's incontrovertible, indisputable truth. May I do that?
Okay.
So you look like you're in pretty good physical shape.
I hope so.
Did you ever run track or anything in school?
Not really. Maybe when I was like very young.
Very young.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you run?
Yeah.
Can you run a mile?
Yeah.
You can run a mile. Okay. So let's get in a race. Okay? The stakes are big. We're going to get in a race. You're going to go, it's not fair for us to go the same distance. I got a brace on my leg. You have no brace. So we can't go the same distance, right? So here's what we're going to do. You're going to run a mile. I'm going to go 2 miles. Wait a minute. I'm dyslexic. Did I say that backwards? Did I say that? I think I said that. Did I say that backwards? Oh, well, I'm a person of my word. I've already said it. So you're going to run a mile. I'm going to go 2 miles. Who's going to win that race? Like, clearly. Who? Just say it.
Me.
Right. He's from the UK, so he feels embarrassed to say it, right? But
Trying to be polite.
He's like, that's not fair. I'm beating up on this guy. He's got this brace. It is what it is. But I'm the one that messed up, so it is what it is. So you're clearly going to win the race, right?
Yeah.
Unless you can't even imagine what I'm about to say next, right? There's nothing you can say, bro. Forget it. There is no unless, right?
Not happening.
Okay. Unless you're running and I'm on a bicycle. Because I said, you're going to run a mile. I said, I'm going to go 2 miles. Not only am I going to win the race, not only am I going to go farther, faster. I'm going to go farther, faster, and I'm going to go twice as far, at least 1.5 times as fast, and use half as much energy as you. Okay. See, here's what I learned from a physicist. All principles are microcosms of each other. So if I can go farther faster in the transportation realm, I can go farther faster in the financial realm and use less energy. But wait, there's more. That's not fair. I've got a bike, you don't have a bike. So let's give you a bike. We have another race. You go 2 miles, I go 4. And you win again. Less. I'm in a car. You're thinking, what are you talking about, bro? Farther, faster, use less energy. I'm in a car. I win. I can go 4 miles, way more than twice as fast as you on a bike can go 2 miles. And all I'm doing is sitting there. I'm not out of breath. I'm not tired. I'm not sweating. I'm none of that. That's not fair. I've got a car. So let's get you a car. You go 50 miles. I go 100 miles. You win again unless I'm on a plane. That's not fair. So let's get you a plane. You go 100 miles. I'll go 200 miles. You win again unless I'm on a jet. You say, Myron, what's your point? My point is, I can always make up in leverage what I lack in ability. And too many people are more in tune with their limitations of ability than they are with the potential of the leverage if they'd access it. So people who are making between $0, right, and $50,000 a year, they're running financial, or $100,000 a year. They're running financially. It doesn't matter how hard they run. They're never going to go faster or farther than a person who has leverage, better leverage. So, doesn't matter how talented they are. Doesn't matter how athletic they are. So, if you're making between $100,000 and $250,000, you're on a bicycle, financial bicycle. If you're making between $250,000 and $500,000, you're in a car. If you're making between $500,000 and $1 million, you're on a plane. If you're making more than $1 million, you're on a financial jet. Farther, faster, less energy. I can always make up and leverage what I lack in ability. It's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time because it's easier to make great strides than it is to make small advances. And now it makes sense, doesn't it?
The power of perspective as well. It's
Exactly.
Opening your mind.
Exactly. If you're having a hard time doing something, stop trying harder at what's not working and go find some leverage. You know what people say when you say go find some, how much does leverage cost? How long does it take to learn how to use leverage? I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to ride a bike. I don't know how to build a YouTube channel. I don't know how to write a book. What does that have to do with anything? You didn't know how to walk when you got here, but you figured it out.
You know, one of the things I enjoyed this section in the book, you talk about the 3 houses. The poor house, the middle class house, the rich house. This is what you said about the poor house. You said, the main reason poor people are poor is because they believe the only real purpose of money is to spend it. And then you said middle class people have a different focus. They take their money and buy what I call wealth reducing liabilities. And then you said for the rich people, the rich house, you said most people can't think of any way to make money unless they're working for it. That's why most people are broke. They don't know how to make money without working for it. Rich people, on the other hand, know how to make money without working hard for it.
Not only that, rich people know how to make money work for them instead of them working for money. I heard a guy named Wade Cook. Here's what he said. I got this from Wade B. Cook. Here's what he said. The reason you have to have a job is because your money is unemployed. What? You need to get your money out the unemployment line so you can get off that job.
Yeah.
That's fire, ain't it?
Yeah. That's very good.
So yeah, money making money. The primary purpose of money is to turn it into more money. And one of the things I said in the book also is I like to hold on to my money long enough for it to get pregnant and have some babies. And I never spend the mama money. I only spend the baby money. I want my money to turn into a money maternity ward up in here. Little cribs everywhere, little dollar bills talking about, wow, I want to be 100. I want to be 100.
What's the moment, because we've covered the trash man, and we've given people that visualization, that feel of what it was like in your life and how it felt when you were the trash man. And to me, what the trash man symbolizes was like, you were in that kind of, that poor environment. What was the first moment in your life when you felt rich, when you were like, okay, I've made it? Like, this is in complete contrast to my experience earlier.
Well, I not only do I remember when I felt it, I remember when I said something about it, and I got checked by somebody who knew what wealth felt like, what wealth really felt like. So I was at a Robert Allen wealth retreat, and he's asking for people to have testimonials. And I read his books. I listened to his audio programs. I did what he said. It changed my life, right? So I'm like, yeah, I used to be a trash man making $6.25 an hour. Now I'm the cash man. I make $30,000 a month. My living expenses are only $5,000 a month. I live like a king. Robert Allen, in front of 700 people, said to me, wow, you're doing really good. You're about to have a breakthrough to the really big money. I'm like, wait, did he just diss my $30,000 a month in front of 700 people? Then I thought, wait, there's a level where $30,000 a month ain't that much money. I was like, let me get to that level. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I realized in that moment that the levels to this game are very, very, very different. Like, there are people, if they had my wealth, they would feel like they are poor. Now, fortunately, when I had 1/10 of my wealth, I didn't feel like I was poor, right? Like, I didn't even feel like I was poor when I was poor. I mean, reflecting on that, I knew I was. Like I tell people, if you can't be happy with a little, you won't be happy with a lot. When I was happy when I was broke, I just wasn't happy that I was broke.
Yeah. You know what? So you reached six figures in 1999, and you achieved seven figures by 2005. If we go to that moment in 2005, and again, I'm the fly on the wall.
Yeah.
What does your life look like? Like, what is the context? What are the surroundings? Like, what is a day in the life of Myron Golden in 2005?
Well, it depends on the day. So, and what I mean by that, it depends on the day, because what I did back in those days is I would speak at other people's events. So I would do events where I'd go speak at other people's events, and I'd make an offer and people would buy it, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd have my own event once a month, and then I would make an offer and people would buy it. And so, like, that's what it felt like. Work days were mostly on the weekends. I worked mostly on the weekends, like on a Saturday. And then on my event, I would do Friday and Saturday. So that's what it looked like. And every Tuesday night, I would do a conference call before we had webinars and all that stuff. Like, I would do a conference call called The Hour to Empower from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. every Tuesday night. And about every 8th or 9th call, I would make an offer on that. And so I built my first website in 2005, hoping to make like $400 my first month. And when we launched it in June of 2005, the first month I was like, if I can make $400, it's gonna be great. If I can make $700, this thing's gonna be on. My first month we did $6,700. I was like, that was crazy. But I thought it was a fluke, because this guy named Jeff had a conference call. He invited me to speak on his conference call. And 5,700 of that 6,700 came in overnight, just from the people on his conference call. And he didn't even want an affiliate commission. He just wanted me to help his people and teach them something, and then I can make an offer. Okay. So I said, I need a conference call. So that's why I started a conference call. And then I started doing my own conference call, but I thought it was a fluke. I thought, now we're going to do $400 to $600. The next month I did $5,100. The next month I did $6,600. By December of that year, I was making $10,000 a month just on the internet, not including my seminars. It's like, it was about to be on now, right? And so, I was unknown. Nobody knew who I was. I wasn't the Myron Golden. I was Myron the Owl. You say, what's Myron the Owl mean? Myron who? Right? So, so that's basically what it looked like. And so but back in those days, there were no digital downloaded products. Like when I started selling from 2001 to about 2006, probably, I was selling cassette tapes. And then we went from cassette tapes to CDs and DVDs, and then from CDs and DVDs to digital downloads. So like I had these duplicators, like I had tape duplicators in my house. Like I'd have a 1-on-3 where I put a tape in, and I could duplicate 3 tapes at a time, and I created these series, and like it was crazy. And like I'd go out on the weekend and I'd sell a bunch of product, and I'd come back home and produce the product I sold, and then ship it out, and then go out, and I just kept doing that. Put that thing on rinse and repeat, because when I find something that works, I put it on rinse and repeat. I would just put it on rinse and repeat in different cities, and I never went back to the same city more than twice in a year. And just kept doing that over and over and over again, and it turned into a thing eventually.
Even when you talk about it, I can see like the smile on your face. Like when you reflect on that period, did it feel? It almost felt easy.
Oh no, it didn't almost feel easy. It felt incredibly easy because I had been doing hard stuff my whole life. Like I had been, like, I would put back when I used to sell those, buy the cars and fix them up and sell them. I'd buy a car on a Monday. It needed painted. I'd sand it down, do all the body work on it, paint it, and then I'd call on. I wanted to come out in the paper on Saturday, in the classified ads. I know this all sounds so weird, right? I wanted to come out on Saturday in the classified ads, so I'd make sure it was coming out on Saturday. But if the car wasn't done, I would stay up all day and all night on Thursday and Friday getting this car painted, so when people came to see it, it would look good. In Gary, Indiana, in the wintertime, with kerosene heaters and paint fumes, like in a garage of a house garage, so that I could make this money. Like, so that's the kind of stuff I was used to doing. You mean I get to talk to people? I don't like talking to people anyway? And y'all gonna pay me? Man, child, please. We about to do this.
You know, one of the things, I remember this quote hit me. It's, we make plans and God laughs at them.
Mm.
And there's something, I even just think about your story and where you started, and you're the trash man, and you're working around the clock, and you're not earning much money doing it, to the point that you're making millions of dollars in 2005, 2006, like these years, and it almost feels easy. It felt easy.
It felt easier than easy until it felt hard. Because, so we don't have control over the things that happen to us. Even when it feels like we don't, we have control over us when those things happen to us. And so, a series of events starting in 2007, going all the way through 2012. So that's, what is that? 5 years.
5 years.
And then after that, all the way through 2014, like my life was in a downward spiral that I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to pull myself out of. And it started in 2007 when my oldest son was in a car accident, and he passed away 4 days later. And it was so painful and so surreal that it's unimaginable. It's really unimaginable. And as hard as it was for me to watch my son die, the hardest part about it was watching my wife watch her son die, and watching my other 2 children watch their brother die. And I'm supposed to be the dad who's protecting and taking care of them. There was nothing I could do. And it's so how's this happening? That's what happened in 2007, 2008. They created the Great Recession right after I bought my first $1 million house, and my mortgage was $8,500 a month. But what's $8,500 a month if you're making over $100,000 a month? Like, it's nothing, right? And then 2009, I'm like, I got to do something, man. We're like disintegrating. So I got started in a multi-level marketing company, built an organization. I was making $40,000 a month within 4 months. Like, just from the compensation plan, I was making another $100,000 a month, teaching people in the company how to do what I did. And then the company changed the product. And then $40,000 a month turned into $16,000 a month, and into $4,000 a month, then $3,000 a month, then nothing a month. I was like, oh boy, I can start over. Then 2010, I got audited by the IRS 4 months after my accountant moved to Australia. I had to hire a forensic accountant. to go back and redo all my taxes for 2005, 2006, 2000. Like, it was like nightmare compounding upon nightmare. And then my mom passed away in 2011. And then we had to sell our $1 million house on a short sale for $600 and some thousand in 2012. And then we moved across the country on borrowed money from Pennsylvania to Florida. I borrowed money from people who would loan it to me. My brother, a couple of friends, my brother-in-law. And we moved to Tampa, and we rent a house because my credit was so bad I couldn't get a house. This is after being the richest person most of the people in my life knew. Now I'm so poor that I'm borrowing money. And then it got so bad that 2013, 2014, my best friend loaned me $4,000 a month so I could live while I was going through this IRS debacle. And I finally pulled out of it. And end of 2014, 2015, I discovered King Solomon's business model in the Bible, and I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I knew it was going to work. I didn't know when it was going to work, but I knew it was going to work. And something else happened in 2015. I was talking to Jerry Clark. Jerry's one of my first mentors in selling and business and seminars and all that. And that was back in the days when Ty Lopez was like on a rocket ship, like on social media. In my car, in my garage with my Lamborghini, blah, blah, blah. I was like, Jerry, how much do you think Ty makes? Jerry's like, I don't know, man, probably $800,000 a month. And like the most I'd ever made in a month was $400,000. So like when he said $800,000 a month, like what? I'm like, what does that mean? Like $800,000 a month? Like 800,000 doesn't go with a month, right? It goes with a year. I'm like, 800,000 a month, and I'm thinking to myself, like, how does somebody make $800,000 a month? Which is fascinating because that was like break my brain big money back then, right? And so I couldn't get that out of my head. And I'd watch Ty Lopez, and I'm thinking, yeah, he's a smart guy, and he's like good. He's not better than me. I'm not saying I'm better than him, but he's not better than me. Like, he's making $800,000 a month. What am I missing, right? And so I'm going to do King Solomon's business model. And I'm just like, I'm like all in on King Solomon's business model. Man, within 2 years, I was back making $1 million a year. By 2019 or 2020, I think it was 2020, we made $2.6 million. I'm like, okay, we're back.
I had to say something on this because when I first heard King Solomon's business model, I had no idea what it was. And Myron kept mentioning it on the trip. He mentioned it obviously just in the episode. And so on day 2 of the trip, we go on a boat from Tampa to an island called St. Pete's for lunch. And over lunch, I turned to Myron and I asked him, I said, what is King Solomon's business model? And he breaks it down into 2 clear steps. Step 1, King Solomon didn't market to everyone. He built a business that only attracted high value clients. In his day and age, that was kings and queens. For your business, you need to find who are those high value clients and only appeal to them. Step 2, he only focused on solving big problems. So in his time, that was governance, that was disputes, that was infrastructure, that was economic growth. And what led to King Solomon being in demand was that he solved the biggest problems of his time. And so for you in your business, you want to become the problem solver in your industry and sell your clients on the transformation. Something that Myron actually told me, and again, I wrote it in my notes, in my notebook. He said, a person can only be great at sales when they obsess over the solution to someone else's problem. And if you obsess over other people's problems, they will obsess over paying you. And so there you have it. If you just understand those 2 steps from King Solomon's business model, and you can infuse it and integrate it into your business, it will achieve incredible results.
In 2022, I discovered YouTube. Like, I was on YouTube already, but I found out YouTube would pay you. Well, there's some motivation, right? I was on YouTube for 14 years before I knew they paid people for content. Is that crazy? Yeah. Right? And so I started being consistent on YouTube and started creating videos, and YouTube started paying us a really decent amount of, enough money for me to live off of, like, and still have plenty of left over if I didn't make any money from anywhere else. It's that like crazy. Like, even to this day, it's kind of like, how is this a thing? How is this $1 billion company paying me tens of thousands of dollars a month to do what I would do anyway, even if they weren't paying me? Anyway, So we went from, I think, 2.6 million to 6.2 million in 2022. And then 15 million. Like, what is this? Right? And so it all felt surreal. But Jerry telling me in 2015 that Ty was making $800,000 a month was one of those catalysts that made me say, oh, let's go. On a subconscious level, it's like, just 800? Oh, just 800? Let's go. Right? So it's all relative. The numbers are neither big nor small, except your imagination makes them so.
Yeah. You know what? So, fortunately, in my life, I haven't yet experienced the death of someone that's really close to me.
Mm-hmm.
I know from my mom that her mom died when she was 14.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
And the thing that made it's difficult, irrespective of when it happens in your life.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that made it especially difficult, she had no idea that her mom had cancer. It was completely unexpected. And so I think about April 18th, 2007, your son,
you got the date. Wow.
Your son Adam dies in a car crash.
Well, he died on the 22nd, but he had the accident. No, he had the accident on the 15th, died on the 18th. You're right. Yep.
And I think back to what my mom told me, completely unexpected.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was completely unexpected. He was working with me in the business. We were vibing. We were doing a thing. Yeah.
At that point, how do you even make sense? How do you even get your mind around something like that?
Well, you don't really, other than the fact that it makes you aware of some things that now I was already aware of, but I wasn't aware of them at that level. One, it makes you aware of the brevity of life. Even if you live to be 140, that's a short period of time in the scheme of eternity, or in the scheme of history, that's a short period of time. If you live to be 140, right? I still have like 77 years to go to get to 140. That's a short period of time. My son died when he was 20. Life is short. Don't just exist. Live. Number two, it gives you an awareness of the reality of eternity. When you leave time, you are going into eternity. That's real. I believe it shows me more than anything else, not my son dying, just the fact that we're all going to die. I need a savior. And I know people that, I don't believe in that. Okay, it doesn't matter. Like, if I say I don't believe in the moon, does the moon care? No, it doesn't. I don't believe in the sun. Okay, the sun's not going to stop shining because I don't believe in it, right? So, and then it makes you aware of the illusion of control. Like, you think you're in charge until somebody who you love more than you love life dies, and there's nothing you can do. You realize how much of an illusion control is, and so you can just stop trying to have it. Stop trying to have control. Just let life be life, and let it teach you what it has to teach you. And so, I wanted to make sure, because see, my awareness in this situation was me, my wife, my children, my brothers, my nieces and nephews, my family was going to have to live with this from now on. So I'm preaching my son's funeral. Why? Because I don't want somebody else to mess up what it means. I'm not going to let somebody else paint the picture of what this means that we have to live with. That is now my responsibility.
You spoke about the most painful part of it.
Yes.
Was the impact that you saw it had on your wife, the impact that you saw it had on your other children. What was that impact?
Well, it's more like, what is that impact? That my oldest son's absence is always present. And he's not. That's the impact.
You know what? We've spoken right in the beginning of this conversation about being of service.
Uh-huh.
And so I think to the person that's listening to this conversation right now, and they are in that moment,
Mm-hmm.
that in that moment where they have lost someone who is so dear to them, who they would not be the person that they are today if that person wasn't there, and now they're gone. And as someone who's not only gone through that, has gone through different things just not going the way that you would have expected and been able to bounce back, what's one piece of advice you would offer that person that's listening?
Probably something they're not ready to hear yet if they're right in it, but I'll still say it so that when they get ready, it'll be there for them. None of us are wise enough or smart enough to know what's good or bad looking through the windshield of our lives. We can only tell what's good or bad looking through the rear view mirror. And just because something feels bad doesn't mean it's bad. Just because something feels good doesn't mean it's good. Because the reality is, whatever it is what it is. So what are we going to do to become the person we're supposed to be because it is what it is? Like, I understand the purpose of pain, even though pain still hurts. What does that mean? Well, the purpose of any of us, or all of us going through pain, is this. This is what the scripture says. We are to comfort others with the same comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted of God. You know what happened about a month and a half, 2 months after my son died? My cousin, who's like a sister to me, her daughter was killed at 14. And I had just gotten reconnected with him maybe 2 years earlier. Hadn't seen her since we were like little kids in elementary school. Now we're reconnected. Every time I go to Minnesota, we're hanging out. Now this happens. I'm like, oh, what? And in full disclosure, if I've got to have a special connection with somebody, I'd much rather have it over something else. But God knows why he put us here and who he put us here to serve. And if we can't yield to that, we're not just resisting our pain, we're resisting our purpose. So, I don't know if that almost kind of sort of makes sense or not.
It makes sense. Did you ever feel lost? Like, did it ever just feel like it just doesn't really all make sense anymore? Because I think when we do things in service of others. We do things in service of our family, the people that matter. And so when unexpected things happen, it almost calls into question the entire process.
No. So I don't know if you remember this interview that this kid, not a kid, young man named James from the School of Hard Knocks did with me when I was getting out of my car at Eddie V's. And he asked me a question. He said, "Do you believe in God?" And I said, "I more than believe in God. I trust God." What I meant by that is I don't just believe that God exists. I trust that God knows what's best, even when what's best feels like it's what's worse. And so, no, in that, I never felt lost. I never felt like this doesn't make sense. I felt like this is a painful thing that I would really rather not have to go through. And as much as I don't like it, and I would never have chosen it, I feel humbled that God would trust me to go through this so that I can serve people in the capacity He asked for me to serve them. I would have never chosen it. Not for me or not for anybody else. But since this is the ordained path for my life, I want to make sure that I don't misrepresent God.
I remember growing up, something my auntie would always say. She says, God saves his greatest battles for his greatest soldiers.
That's good.
You know what? I think one of the things I think you actually mentioned this earlier today. Around 2013, 2014, I think you said I was broke as a joke.
And ready to choke. I was living on borrowed money. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just curious the experience, right? Because we hear about people that are poor, but they've always been poor. They were always kind of in that environment. I want to hear about the experience of someone who started in poor conditions, rose to the level of wealth that you did, and then was broke again.
Right.
And so, like, what does that even do mentally when you go through that experience?
So because from my perception and perspective, a lot of it was created by the powers that be. The government, the IRS, the what does Sherry call them? The insidious representatives of Satan. Because of that, like, the hard part for me was not making money again. The hard part for me was believing that it was worth it to do it again, because what way are they going to figure out to take it from me this time? And I can remember moving to Tampa, and thank God for friends. I got a good friend who lives here in Tampa, Dr. Delatoro McNeil, and he would have these things called Motivational Mondays, and he invited me to come speak, and I made a little offer, and like he'd had him in his event, what's it called? Full Throttle Experience, FTX 2013, and he invited me to speak, and I was so he helped me to kind of get back on the saddle. But man, I can remember living in my little rent house in Land O'Lakes, Florida, about, 15 miles north of here. I can remember it, like, quote, trying so many things, and none of it seemed to work. Stuff that I used to do that just like was easy. Now, like the easiest things that used to seem so easy, now they're all hard, or they feel hard. And I remember thinking, like, this is, like, I owed the IRS $1,065,000, and I didn't have $6,500. It felt like a hole that I can't climb out of. And to make it worse than just feeling a hole I can't climb out of, like, nothing I'm working on is working for me. And I can remember sitting on my back patio, and my wife came out and said, "What's wrong?" I just broke down and started crying like a baby. Nothing's working, and I'm trying to. And she's like patting me on my back. "No, you'll figure it out. You always do." And I'm worried. It's not working. I mean, I am boo-hooing. And that was temporary, but it didn't feel temporary when I was in it. I was feeling all that.
Feels like the world's falling.
Oh, right. And it's falling down on my head.
I heard you say this. You said, "How did I overcome all of that?" You said, "I had people in my life." What I did to overcome all of that, I had people in my life that believed in me and supported me during that time. The first and foremost was my wife. The second was my son and my daughter. They were there 100%. And so I also had a friend who helped out, and he loaned you $4,000 a month.
Yeah, for 2 years. People, it's so weird. People on social media are so funny. It's so funny how jumping to conclusions is the only exercise some people get. And they're like, "You act like you were broke, but you had somebody loaning you $4,000 a month. And that's not broke." Like, First of all, time out, baby. First of all, the reason he was willing and able to loan me $4,000 a month was because when he was $1 million in debt and his company was losing $30,000 a month, I showed them how to turn that business around from losing $30,000 a month to the point where they were doing $1 million a month in revenue. And he said, "Myron didn't let me drown. I'm not going to let him drown. This is my covenant brother, and if he needs help, I'm going to be there for him." He didn't just help me save my business. Like, he felt like, and he said this, otherwise I wouldn't say it. He said, "My grandfather's going to be known as the man who created wealth for our family. I'm going to be known as the one who lost it all." And I showed him how to turn that around using stuff that I had learned. And his business was booming when mine was dooming. And he's like, "Nah, bro, you ain't going down. Not like this. Not if I'm here, you ain't going down." And so, like, it wasn't just out of the clear blue sky. I had this friend that was so rich. Like, people miss the point. You reap what you sow. Every thought is a seed. Every word is a seed. Every deed is a seed that you're sowing into the garden of your future. The reason I was able to reap $4,000 a month as a loan when I needed it is because I sowed way more than that in seed when I could.
You know, it makes me think about the power of the mind. And here's what I mean with that is you mentioned that the most difficult thing was almost like finding the motivation, the reason to build back up, because you believed that if you built back up, they would just find another way to take it from you.
That's real.
And I think it is real. And I hear it with so many people that their mindset is almost like the world is conspiring against them. Mm-hmm. They've been placed in these circumstances completely out of their control. There's nothing they can do. Right. And a lot of people never emerge from that.
Right.
That completely depicts and characterizes their life and their experience.
Right, because they've capitulated to it. But see, when people think that the world, like the cultural hypnotic societal mechanism, is conspiring against them, they're not wrong. It is. There are people, like, you go to work every day to make your money, and there are executives in rooms figuring out how to get you addicted to their products so you spend most of your money on their stuff. That's real, right? There are companies out there that have started, that will intentionally, do you know why they put sugar in everything? Do you know why they put sugar in almost all so-called food products? Because it's one of the most addictive substances in the world. Did you know that there's literally an equation called the potato chip marketing equation?
What is that?
Right. They figured out if their best customers eat, on average, 12 ounces of potato chips, they'll put 10 ounces in a bag, so they buy 2 bags. That's how intentional they are about getting your money. There are tax loopholes that you don't know about, and that the media outlets will make you afraid to use, and the government is not going to broadcast to you because the government is in competition with you for your money. So you're not wrong that they're conspiring against you, but that doesn't make you a helpless victim. Don't let it make you a helpless victim. Let it make you a prepared warrior. Warrior. What do I mean? Everything that is against you strengthens you for what comes next. Don't capitulate to the circumstances. Rise up against them. You're not wrong. They're coming for you. So since you know they're coming for you, let's go. Get ready. Do the thing. Because it can't be against you without also being for you. This is one of the most mind-blowing principles that exist. The law of polarity. For every action, there's equal and opposite reaction. Did you know that beliefs manifest as faith or doubt? Faith and doubt are both beliefs. People think faith is belief and doubt is the absence of belief. Doubt's not the absence of beliefs. Doubt is absolutely the presence of belief. Faith is belief in the outcome you desire. Doubt is belief in the outcome you don't. And so, when you have more faith that it's not going to work, more belief that it's not going to work, than you do that it is going to work, then you have doubt. When you have more belief that it is going to work than it's not going to work, then you have faith. But they're both beliefs. It's impossible for something to only be against you. Everything that is against you is also simultaneously just as much for you. But you get the part you focus on. So here's what the scripture says about the crucifixion of Jesus, which is the most grave human atrocity that's ever been perpetrated on earth. Here's what it says. If the princes of this world had known what they were doing, they would not have crucified the Lord of glory. Why? Because they bruised his heel, and he crushed their head with that same bruise. So everything that is against you is also for you. But you have to learn how to perceive the part that's for you and not just the part that's against you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You remember the moment in your life when you actually, it's almost like you overcame that. Like you finally felt like you were back on your feet. Like we are back. Like this, and maybe it wasn't even like a money accomplishment or an amount of money you made. It was just like a quiet moment. It was just like this personal thing that was meaningful to you.
Yeah, we've had a lot of those, but like when I decided to do King Solomon's business model, and all of a sudden it just started working like really, really fast. Like really, really fast. And I started showing people, well, this is what we're doing, this is how I'm doing it, and this is why I'm doing it. And I showed them, it's like, you can do this too. And then I think the moment that I realized, well, two moments that really, really, really solidified the transformation. And I think I'm going to end with this because I don't want to wear people out. This is a good note to end on. You ready? I remember being in Russell Brunson's inner circle. When people asked a question, I gave an answer. Everybody acted like my answer was the best answer they've ever heard. I was the brokest person in the room. I realized, oh, now I get it. The reason I'm struggling, I've been selling to the wrong people. Huh. It was so crazy. I can remember sitting in a room with Alex Hormozy. He's 20-something. He was making way more money than me back then. He's making way more money than me now. But he was like, we're in this mastermind. He's like, yeah, I do this, turn around these gyms, and then I charge them $4,000 and fly home. And I said, you do what? And you charge how much? He said, I charge $4,000. You do all that for $4,000. He said, yeah, how much would you charge? I said, I don't know, but I'd charge more than $4,000. He said, what would you charge? I said, I don't know. $6,000, $8,000? And there's no difference between 6 and 8, so you might as well charge 8. He said, well, in that case, there's no difference between 8 and 10. I might as well charge 10. I said, now you get it. By the time he was no longer in that mastermind, he was selling that same program for $45,000 that he used to sell for $4,000. I remember Dan Locke bought my speaker training program where I teach people how to sell from stage. And we had this call, and he told me, he said, yeah, I did that stuff you said. We had 1,000 people in the room. We did $1 million in revenue in a day. I'm like, what? $1 million in a day? He's when I talk. Oh, I've been selling to the wrong people. And so I tell Russell, I said, Russell, you're a great teacher. You're a great marketer. The greatest thing that I've gotten out of being in your mastermind is I got introduced to who I really am, because I realized that I've been serving the wrong people all this time. Not that I'm serving, like I still like to help people who are just getting started. I just do that with my community service content. And by community service content is, I mean, the stuff that I could and would ordinarily sell, I just do it on YouTube. So people who don't have money and think that all you want to do is sell them something, I'm going to give them enough help so they can go make enough money. So when I am ready to sell them something and they're ready to buy it, they don't have to worry about the money. So those the conversations in Russell's room, and then the transformation of Dan Locke telling me that he made $1 million in one day doing what I taught him how to do. And then I started focusing on teaching people how to do that. And then all of these people who you would know, if I named them, started having these life turnarounds and coming back and reporting with what happened. And I'm like, boom. Like if you find yourself in a really, really desperate situation and you have a skill that's really, really valuable, find the people who have the most money who need that solution and then charge them a lot for it. Problem solved.
You know, before we get out of here, because you said this earlier and I need to give it to people. You said the number one mistake new people make in selling is that they want people to buy.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you explain what you mean by that?
Yeah. I am totally divorced. Not from my wife. Okay, 40 years. It'll be 40 years this year. Okay, I am totally divorced from hoping somebody says yes while I'm making an offer. I could care less. What if you just trusted when you make an offer that people are smart? And they're smart enough to know if it's for them when it is, and they're smart enough to know that it's not when it's not. If you can do that, a couple of things happen. One, what if you only desired people to say yes for whom your offer is best and nobody else? What if that were the case? Like you really wanted people who your offer wasn't good for to say no. What would you do? You would make your offer unappealing to people who it wasn't good for. One of the ways I do that is I raise my prices so that people who aren't going to do the work. And what do I mean I raise the prices to keep? Because paying for the offer is the easiest part of taking advantage of the offer. So if you're unable to overcome the lowest hurdle, you're definitely not going to overcome the hard ones. So I raise the price. Does that make sense so far? Okay. And then I realize how human nature works. If in my conversation with you, a sales conversation with you, if I make you feel like I need you, i.e. commission breath, I'm going to make so much money if he says yes. Right? If I make you feel like I need you, you believe you don't need me. But if I make you feel like you don't need me, then if I make you feel like I don't need you, then you automatically believe you need me. What's the best way to make somebody feel like you don't need them? Realize you don't need them. I don't need you to say yes to my offer. I literally could care less. Like you will never in your life, I don't think you'll ever in your life find a lower pressure salesperson than me. Like when I make an offer, it's like, okay, this is my offer. You're smart. I trust you. If it's for you, you'll know it. If it's not, you'll know it. This is my offer. This is how much it costs. If you're expecting me to sit here and talk you into it, you have me confused with Byron Silver. I'm not doing that. So tell me yes or tell me no. Tell me now I got to go. I'm heading to the golf course. Here's the link. If it's for you, take advantage of it. Love you. See you later. I'm going to the golf course. It's literally that low key. Why? Because I understand the laws of nature. Here's a law of nature in selling. You ready? It's called the law of averages. Regardless of who you are, if you have an offer that's valuable, if you present it to enough people, some of those people will say yes. If you take the law of averages, let's say you make one sale out of every 20 people who sees your offer. If you get 200 people to see your offer, you're going to make 10 sales. So what did I just do? I took the law of averages and I applied the law of large numbers to it. Because if you let 2,000 people see your offer, 200 are going to say yes. So because I know someone's going to say yes, I don't need it to be you. So I'm totally leaned out. I'm not trying to convince you. I love you enough to hope for your sake this is in your best interest. But if you say no, oh, well, you do you, boo. I'm on my way out the door. I got to go to the golf course. The golf course calling my name. And see, stop needing people to say yes, because the more you need somebody to say yes and the more often they say no, the less likely you are to continue in the journey. Hey. That's what I mean. Hey. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Here's where I want to end. I land in Tampa airport yesterday.
Uh-huh.
We get in your car and one of the first things that happened, I think it was your brother or your son that called you in the car when we're in the car. And you mentioned that your family...
Oh, my son-in-law.
Yeah. That your family's out skiing at the moment and all that stuff. And you talk about how special your granddaughter is for you.
That's the understatement of the entire century.
And so I'm curious, even if we were just to transport her into this room and she just watched this interview, she watched this conversation.
She'd come up here on stage and want to sit here and talk with us. Oh, she'd be all in the mix.
I guess, what is it thinking about where you came from, where you started, the trials and the tribulations that you went through, what does it even mean to you as a human being that you can carry out that sort of legacy, to see where your granddaughter's starting versus where you started?
So a couple of things. One, 3 of my grandparents died before I was born. I was probably in the 3rd grade when I met my paternal grandmother, and I didn't really know her. And she was just, and I know this sounds terrible, but I'm just being very transparent. She was just a scary old lady. Like, it wasn't like we had some special relationship where she said, "Come here, Myron, hey, let's," no, there wasn't. Like, so when people talked about grandmother, grandfather, it was not a vibe I could understand. So that was one of my past perceived voids. So the idea of being something that I've never had, oh, that was everything this to me. And then knowing that my son's life and my daughter's life and my granddaughter's life, even though my son and my daughter are brilliant entrepreneurs, they were in masterminds with me and we're all learning stuff together and they know how to do stuff I don't know how to do. Their life is better because I cared enough to change the direction and the trajectory of our family. It makes me feel like I did not misrepresent God to my family. And what I mean by that is the Hebrew word for father is Abba. In English, that's spelled A-B-B-A. It's 4 letters. In Hebrew, it's spelled with 2 letters. Aleph, Beit. The letter Aleph represents God. The letter Beit represents the house. So the father is God in the house. So my job as a dad is to represent God to my family first. What does that mean? God is the progenitor of the house. The father's the progenitor of the house. God is the creator of everything. The father is the provider of the house. The father is the promoter of the house. And the father is the protector of the house. So I know I've not been a perfect parent by any stretch of the imagination, but I did not misrepresent God. That's what it means to me.
That's special. Myron Golden, where can they find you?
Where can people find me? They can find me on YouTube and Instagram if they want just some community service content. They want to learn some valuable lessons, and the only thing they have to pay is attention. They can find me on YouTube and Instagram under my name, Myron Golden. I think on TikTok, it's Myron Golden Official. Oh, by the way, make sure that your audience knows that if somebody is trying to sell them some cryptocurrency with my picture, it's not me, it's a scammer. Okay, just want to say that. And then if they want to go to like CallumJohnsonShowChallenge.com, they can join my challenge for either $97, where I teach people how to make offers, or if they're afraid it might not be worth the money, they can do the VIP experience, which is $297. You say, why would they do that? Well, because the VIP experience comes with a 10 times better than money back guarantee, which means if you come to the challenge and you're in the VIP experience and you like do it according to the way that we lay it out, which is you show up every day, you have your camera turned on, and you're paying attention and do the homework. And the homework's like one basic activity you have to do every day on social media. If you do that, if by Friday you don't feel like it was worth 10 times what you paid for it, you're going to pay $297. If in your mind it was not worth $2,970, I'm going to give you your $297 back. The bonuses we gave you get to keep, and we're still friends. Okay. So go to CallumJohnsonShowChallenge.com.
Okay. Myron Golden, thank you very much.
That was fire, bro.
That was great,
brother.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. It's really a dream for me that I get to do this. It's surreal that this is what I do full time and every week. So if you enjoy the content, if you enjoyed the conversation, the stories, please hit that subscribe button. It helps us immeasurably with growing the channel, with getting guests, all of those things. So please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.